Right, so this is a hard video to make. One, because this was something that was hard for me to do and to talk about. And then the other reason is because this is a topic that lots of people have a lot of feelings about and therefore have a lot of opinions and judgments about. So I'm going to do this video Q&A style. I'm going to answer the most frequently asked questions that I've received about this, as well as respond to some of the typical comments that I'm hearing. A bit of a disclaimer for this video, sort of, is that by choosing to make this video and choosing to publish this video, I am opening myself up for people's judgments and opinions about a decision that I made. And that's tough. Why I've still chosen to make this video is that I've shared my life on social media for several years now, mostly on Instagram and YouTube, and part of my life were my cats. And through sharing my life, people have come to know my cats and they've come to care about them and invest in what happens to them. And I think that through sharing them and people coming to care about them, I think that people will want to know what happened to them and why. So that's mainly why I'm making this video, is for the people who've come to know my cats. And then I guess also for anyone faced with something similar, where maybe they want some insight into the decision making or the process of rehoming cats, or just, I guess, a sense of someone else having gone through it. All right, let's do a little bit of a background. I got Mufasa, my Maine Coon cat, when I was 23 years old. That was 9 years ago. I got Mila, she's a crossbreed Maine Coon, a year later to be company for Mufasa when I started working full-time because I didn't want him to home by himself, but that didn't really work out that well. It seemed like Mufasa would rather be an only child, but nonetheless, it was fine. Anyway, now we fast forward 8 years to about a year ago when we went to Canada. Our cats moved with us. A quick side note, in this video I'm going to change between my cats and our cats, and that's because mostly they were my cats. They were my cats before I even met Ian. They were my cats before we got married. And then I came as a package deal with my cats. So Ian took on that responsibility and became like a cat dad to them. But they were essentially my cats before I met Ian. So that's why my chop and change between my and our. Anyway, it wasn't really a big decision for me to take our cats to Canada or not. It was always part of it. It was like we were all going to move together. So the way that I did our immigration paperwork, our immigration plans, everything I did was geared towards them coming. Like a year before we're coming, I had to do certain things for them to be able to fly. Like I was looking into how they fly, what are the requirements, what are the things. So I don't even think that I actually sat down and thought like, oh, you know, maybe they shouldn't come with us. It was just part of, we're moving and they're coming with us. So let's start with question number one. Do I regret bringing them to Canada given that I have now rehomed them a year and a bit later? No, I do not regret bringing them to Canada, that I would be rehoming them. And the other thing is that I found wonderful homes for them here. I will talk about how and where they are and the types of homes that they went to in this video. And I'm sure I would have found similar homes in South Africa. I don't know in parallel universe, but the one that we are living, I think that they've gone to really loving, caring homes here in Canada. The other thing is when we move, moving takes a lot. It's quite an emotional process, and having them with us throughout it, yes, it was kind of costly. Like there's definitely a lot more expenses when you move pets. There's a lot more stress in the move, like how are they going to handle it? A lot more logistics with like going to the airport, the kind of Airbnb we got, finding a place to rent in a housing crisis that was pet friendly was a lot harder. There were definitely challenges to it, but moving with them, they were this sense of home when we were in a completely new place. And it gave me a lot of comfort, and I'm very grateful for that time. And the other thing that people might wonder about, like, oh my gosh, you put them through the trauma of moving to a new country only to put them through more trauma of rehoming them. That's our assumption that those things are traumatic for them. I thought that flying would be traumatic for them. They really didn't respond the way that I had fears that they would respond. Like they adapted so quickly once we'd moved. I think that those fears are our fears, and often our pets are a lot more adaptable than we think. Okay, back to my story. Then we moved to Canada and Ian's skin issues got a lot worse moving here. Since being here, when people see it or we bring it up, we are getting like constant comments of like, oh yes, that happens in Calgary. Different people have different theories as to why that happens, but the most common theory that we've received is because the air is so dry here in Calgary. So that's answering another question. Probably literally the most frequently asked question that I've gotten is, has Ian's skin gotten worse since we moved to Canada? Yes, very much so. Like 10 times worse, tenfold worse, a lot worse. The theory could be many different things. The dry weather that people speak of definitely probably aggravates it. The other thing is that we're indoors a lot more. The homes are closed up, sealed off from the cold. So during the cold months, you're literally like inside and the furnace is going the whole time, which is also making the air more dry. And then with having cats, like we've suspected that there was an allergy to them, or he's kind of known, but hadn't yet like received confirmation of that allergy. You're in an environment where the fur is not really getting out as much. Even though you're cleaning, like it's gonna go into the furnace, it's gonna be everywhere. Anyway, and then the next frequently asked question we get, has he seen a doctor? Has he seen a dermatologist? Has he seen some other kind of practitioners? And yes. So back to my story. After we moved here, the skin stuff got a lot worse. He saw a doctor for the first time a month after we arrived in Canada, and he was referred to an allergist and a dermatologist, but those things do take a little bit of time here. So it was only a couple of months later that he saw the allergist and the dermatologist. So while all this was going on, I was also pregnant. And then in February, after we arrived in Canada, I gave birth. And things changed. So Mufasa went from, we used to call him my shadow, to suddenly avoiding me and not being around me. My assumption was this is kind of like a mammal thing, you know, give me space to be with the baby, or maybe he just didn't like babies as much. But him and Mila basically stayed downstairs while I stayed upstairs during the first 40 days after Elba was born. That also meant that the cats became primarily Ian's responsibility. And at the time, they were eating a raw food diet, which was also quite time consuming, also quite messy. They had 3 meals a day of raw food. And he would tend to all of their needs while struggling with his skin. He saw a dermatologist around that time, and he started doing treatments 3 times a week while working full-time, while caring for me, so that I could care for Elba, while obviously taking care of the cats. And that was a lot. He then also saw an allergist, and they did allergy tests, and the confirmation came back that he was very much allergic to cats, and the suggestion from the allergist was to rehome the cats. At the time, we did not do that. We tried and wanted to continue to try other ways to make it work for us to be able to keep them. So basically that was now almost a year ago that we received that confirmation, and we received that sort of recommendation from the allergist to do that. What we then did was we purchased a robot vacuum for downstairs to alleviate some of the like manual labor in terms of trying to clean up the fur. I think about a month or 2 later, we also got one for upstairs. And then a few months after that, we got like a special carpet cleaning kind of vacuum. We also got a special air filter with a special like actual filter for pet fur. And we started to keep them out of the bedroom so that they're not in Ian's sleeping space, so that the fur doesn't go like on the bed or less on the clothes. Anyway, we had countless conversations around what more can we do? You know, changes to diet, changes to lifestyle, what's causing stress in our home, what's in the environment, how can we lessen the fur? All while Ian was adapting to a new job or adapting to a new country. I was primarily focused on Elba and parenting. Ian had needed to take over the responsibility of essentially my cats in terms of like their needs and tending to them, because I was staying upstairs with Elba. And at the time, I think he also had a lot of work stress, so there was a lot going on. So now I'm going to answer the big question as to why did I rehome my cats? It's a combination of reasons, but the main thing was because of Ian's skin issues. I'll talk more about like his skin stuff in this video. I'm trying to find the balance because it's, you know, this is my channel and it was my decision to make while not wanting to make it too much about sort of his stuff. But anyway, the other main reason was after Elba was born, I am her primary care person. I am food, I'm comfort, I'm sleep, I'm everything for her with the way that we've chosen to parent. That meant that the cats became Ian's responsibility, and Ian would flare up if he touched them or was around them. So slowly, with us trying to manage his skin stuff and me being a parent to Elba, they got less and less affection and attention than they were used to, because they were used to being on the bed with us, being around us, and now suddenly we were restricting that, and Ian was like not touching them as much, and they used to like lying in the office with him when he was working. So we were trying to prevent that such that his skin wouldn't flare up, and by us trying to keep them, they were just getting less and less from us. And obviously that coincided with the time that I had a baby. So my attention and my resources were much less than what they were used to getting from me. So this made us really sad. And the other thing that was a bit difficult as well is Mufasa didn't want to go near Elba. When she was a baby, he would like really, really avoid her. Then it kind of got a little bit less, and he wouldn't avoid her as much. Like he wouldn't want to go close to her, but he would definitely like walk circles around her. And then when she started crawling, she loved the cats. So she would like get so excited and she'd crawl to them and make really loud, excited noises. And Mufasa likes peace. He's always been a kind of lower energy cat who likes his peace and just doing his own thing. So having Elba crawl up to him, screeching in his face, was not really something he enjoyed. He wouldn't do anything other than just like go away from her. But it's difficult for me to give him affection and attention if she was with me, but he didn't want to be around her. And I'm not sure which scenario is harder, but Mila didn't mind being around Elba, but Elba didn't know gentle hands and didn't know how to like touch and love them, you know, in a way that they might like. So then Mila would come and Elba would just want to bounce on her and screech and like pat her, but like not so gently. It did become like borderline a full-time job trying to either get Mila away from Elba or get Elba away from Mila. All right, so before you come at me and roll your eyes and go like, yeah, you know, when people have babies, they don't care about their pets anymore. I would not have rehomed my pets because I had a baby. As I've explained in this video already, and I'm gonna get to more stuff, it's a combination of factors. If I knew that it was only a short period of time, like while my baby is still a very small baby, that my cats would be getting less affection and attention, I would have just found a way to make that work temporarily and then kept them. But what was happening was I had less time and less resources for them. And Ian, the other person in the home who typically would then step into that role, it was not a good idea for him to do that. Like he tried to do it and every time he'd have flare-ups and then we'd say like, no, like you really need to not brush them. You need to not let them sit on you, not let them sit near you. And we tried to then create that separation for his well-being, and it came at how much love and affection they were used to getting. So no, they were not entirely neglected cats or anything like that. They are on the older side, so they don't even play as much. But they were getting less affection and attention than what they know and what they've known their whole life. And I think they also couldn't understand why we were now creating this separation from them where their whole lives they could go wherever they wanted and be with us. When we moved into this new place as an attempt to try help with Ian's skin, we baby gated the bottom of the stairs because the top floor is carpeted, and we prevented them from being able to come upstairs such that fur wouldn't come onto the carpets and hopefully not come onto the clothes. And again, this is not something they know. And I was worried at the time, and I even spoke about this briefly on my Instagram, like if people judge me for that decision, like to separate from my cats. But the bottom of our house was larger than the apartment that we lived in South Africa. So there was a big space for them to be. It's just that they weren't being with us as much anymore. So no, it wasn't I had a baby, now my pets don't matter, now my pets are getting neglected. It was I had a baby, I don't have as much time and resources to give to my pets anymore, and my spouse, who would have probably lovingly stepped into that role and tried, it was not a good idea for him to be around them. So those two things coincided with being more or less around the same time, and yet we still try to make it work for a pretty long time. But I'm gonna say something that's probably an incredibly unpopular opinion to say, or lots of people might not want to say this out loud for fear of getting judgment or whatever the case is. Having pets and a baby is challenging. It's not something that I found easy. Would I have rehomed my cats because of that? No, I would not have rehomed my cats because of that. But realistically, I do just want to talk about this because I think there's so much fear around people getting judged for not giving their pets as much after they've had a baby that nobody really wants to talk about this. The reality is you have a lot less resources to give. You've brought a whole being into your life that needs you a lot. So yeah, your pets are going to get less of you, or something's going to get less of you, because you've had the same amount of time in a day and now you've brought in an additional whole being that you need to care for. So in our case, one of the changes that we made, for example, is our cats were doing 3 meals a day of raw food. To make it easier, we moved them to purchasing raw food that was like pre-made already, rather than us blending it, as just a way to lessen the effort that it takes to make their food. It wasn't of lesser quality, it was just slightly more expensive. But then when Elba was able to crawl, I was no longer comfortable with the raw food, because cats pick up their food and leave it places and we might not see, and she might crawl somewhere and pick up raw food. So slowly over time, we also changed that they were no longer on a purely raw food diet. We had a lot of raw food left, so it was like a slow transition away from that. But these were changes that we were making to try to free up some of our resources that were now less because we had a baby. The other thing is postpartum is a sensitive time, and it's understandable. Like physiologically, a woman is more sensitive in her postpartum period because you are responding to your baby. So the hormonal dance happening makes that you are more sensitive to pick up on your baby's cues. But what that meant for me was, as someone who's already a sensitive person, like take postpartum out of it, I'm already very easily stimulated by lots of sounds, lots of smells, lots of movement, lots of things. Like I have been my whole life. One of the things that I did find challenging is if, for example, I'd be in the kitchen like making food, then Elba's making lots of sounds, Ian's talking to me, and then the cats are like all over the place and making loud noises. It would be quite intense and it would be quite stimulating and not in a good way. So what I was also finding with the dynamic of a baby, a husband who's struggling with his skin issues, and having 2 cats, was that it wasn't always as easy to be my usual grounded, peaceful self. It would take a lot of effort to just be calm and serene and grounded. And I'm really sad to say this, but my pets went from being this thing that was like joy in my life, like really brought so much enrichment to my life, to suddenly I found myself getting so irritated with them just being normal cats because I didn't have as much to give and I was very sensitive to the sounds and the things happening. Now again, would I have rehomed them because of that? No, I would not. So I'm saying all this because I'm saying it's a combination of factors, but the main reason is I have watched my husband survive through his life for more than a year now. He's not living his life. He's not thriving in life. He's literally surviving because of so much pain and so much discomfort. So he's not out there doing the things that he loves doing because he is either like visibly his skin is inflamed, or it is itchy, or it is painful, or it's a few of those factors. And then with that, I want to say that it's not just that watching him suffer is hard for me and I don't want him to suffer. That is an element of it. But him suffering also impacts on the rest of our lives. So it's also about how that then impacts directly or indirectly onto us. So I want a husband who's not just surviving through life, but who is able to live and to thrive. And I want Elba to have a father who has the energy and the time and feels good to be doing things with her, rather than one who is really, really struggling and really, really suffering. So let me answer the next question that I get asked quite a lot. Is, do I think that rehoming the cats, or did I think that rehoming the cats would solve Ian's skin issues? Sadly, no. I didn't have that expectation before I rehomed them. His skin issues are not one thing only. Is he allergic to cats? Yes, he's allergic to cats. Does it make it worse for him to be in an environment with cats? Yes, it makes it worse for him to be in an environment with cats. Did I have the illusion that if we rehome them, his issues would magically disappear? No, I did not. There's several factors that goes into his skin issues, and we have been looking at the different ones for so long. He has worked with many practitioners. We're still finding new different practitioners. We're still going through trying different things, but it is a combination of stuff that creates the inflammation and the dry. The cats were an element. Aside from the physical part of it, there's also the emotional side of it, where if you know that the cats are causing flare-ups for you and you're in that environment, you're also then stressing about that. So you know that the fur doesn't sit well with you. You know that you have flare-ups when you touch them, when you're around them. Now you're also becoming afraid to be in your home environment because of the pain and discomfort that that causes for you. So it wasn't just about the removal physically of the fur from our house, but also the removal of the fear and then the guilt and the sadness of seeing that they want affection and attention, and then having this mental battle of like, but if I touch them, I'm going to have a breakout. Then feeling sad, like, no, but they need affection and so forth. So it's not just, okay, fur removed, skin issues solved. Because the skin issues, as we understand it, is environmental factors, the dry air, the allergies, maybe some other things that I can't remember right now, as well as some emotional things like stress responses to life. Dietary, we go back and forth, because if you know us and you follow us, like, Ian eats insanely clean. He's worked with a health coach. Like, yeah, I'm not really convinced at this point. Like, he's done elimination of cutting out things, and we're not really seeing a connection there. And he's had loads and loads of tests done in that regard, and everything comes back fine. Anyway, back to rehoming them and me not thinking that this was going to be the solution to it. Ian's been living in pain and been living in this stress of that as well. But aside from that, if you deal with a chronic symptom, a chronic pain or a chronic discomfort, it's really lonely. I also did this in part, like I'm saying, I've said the major reason now. So if I say the smaller reason, please don't be like, oh, I would have never done it for that or that reason. That's not a good enough reason. I'm saying it's a combination of things. Is that I wanted Ian to know that he's very much supported. And yes, we are not exactly in it with him and we don't know what it feels like, but I did want him to feel that he's very much supported by me and by us while he tries to, first of all, just live through this and then figure out the various things that make a difference. So while it's not the only thing that's causing his skin issues, he is allergic to them. There is a fear of being around their fur. And then, of course, there's also like frustrations and a bit of resentment. Like, he didn't get cats. He met me and he married me and I came with cats. So as much as he took that on, this was not a choice that he had made directly to get them. It's a choice he made to have me in his life, and then I came with them. So one of the big moments in this decision-making process for me was when I realized, why am I trying so hard to keep them? Like, I asked myself that, like, why am I trying everything? And we keep brainstorming, we keep trying to keep them. When trying to keep them, Ian is still suffering and they're just getting less and less attention and affection. And I realized that it came down to my belief system. It came down to, I had this belief that when you get a pet for life, and that you are the best home for your pet. But these are just beliefs that I had. These are not facts. They're just sort of general beliefs that we have about how certain things work. So it took a long time. I mean, like I said, it's now been nearly a year, if not, no, it's been more than a year that Ian's had confirmation that he's allergic to the cats before I came to the decision that I was going to rehome them, and then before I actually did something to rehome them. This was a very long process for me. And one of the things that I had to check myself with was this belief that I'm the best home for them. Because once I started challenging that belief, I realized I might not be. I'm not an animal expert, but remember I rehomed cats. I don't think cats attach to one person for life the way that maybe other animals do. Like, I think certain types of birds are very much like one person for the rest of their life, but I don't think that all cats are. Obviously, there probably is some exceptions to that, but I've watched my cats over the years because I've gone away. Different people have stayed in my house, different people have like taken care of them at different times when I've gone on holiday. And I've watched them thrive with that and look like they didn't even notice that I was gone. So it was my belief that I'm the best home for them and that they're going to miss me or realize that I'm absent or that they're not with me. Now, we will never really know whether that's true or not, but I've seen my cats with other people and I know that they are happy when other people are giving them love and attention when I've gone away for like a couple of weeks. Anyway, once I started challenging those beliefs that I was holding onto, the decision did become clearer to me that maybe they would be better off in a different home because I'm trying so hard to keep them and I'm not sure who that's benefiting. Probably only me because it was a really hard thing to do. Now, I took a long time to make this decision, but I didn't talk to anybody about it. It was something that I mulled over, really sat with like what was coming up for me about it. And then I made the decision and I announced it. If you're close to me, this might sound familiar with how I make big life decisions. I know that people close to me have expressed it can be a little bit frustrating that I don't even show anybody that I'm going through this whole like process, but it's how I've known to make really tough decisions in my life, is to just go inward and not ask for anybody else's input or anybody else's opinion and just really sit with everything that comes up for me. And then, okay, I've made the decision and this is what's happening. I know that it even caught Ian off guard when I told him, and he didn't realize that sort of I'd been going through this for months. Let me answer another question is, did Ian make me get rid of my cats? No, he did not make me get rid of my cats. This was my decision to rehome them. Obviously, he was a part of that decision, but this was also incredibly difficult for him and very sad for him to go through. But to be honest, and I know that this was not very kind towards him, I didn't even make him a part of my decision making. I went through that on my own, and then I said to him the one day, you know what? I've decided that we should rehome the cats. Okay, then another comment that I got was, I would rather get rid of my husband. And another one was, a few people actually said this next one, is my husband just suffers and takes antihistamines. I know the whole I would rather get rid of my husband, I assume that it's a joke, but I would not rather get rid of my husband than to rehome my cats. And to speak about, well, my husband just suffers and takes antihistamines, that's a decision that you and your partner are making for your lives. That's not what I want for my husband. I don't want him to just suffer, and I don't want him to take chronic medication so that I can keep my cats. So some of the people that have made those comments to me have that their husbands like sniff a lot and take antihistamines. First of all, antihistamines don't work for Ian. And second of all, he's not just sniffing. Not that I would know whether that my decision would be different if he had a different type of reaction to them, because the body is still having a reaction to them in the environment. So I'm assuming that that's not a good thing. But Ian's skin stuff is like insanely itchy, painful hives. It's not like a bit of congestion. And like I said, antihistamines don't work anyway. So no, I don't want my husband to chronically medicate so that I can keep my cats. I don't think that it is healthy for him to be in an environment where his body is having a literal immune response to the environment. For me, I believe that we need to change things in the environment and we need to look at the root cause of what's going on here. Now, the root cause is not cat fur. That is part of aggravating things. But I still think that we need to make the effort to remove what's in the environment that's aggravating it so that we can look deeper into kind of ways to heal. So many people will say, well, if I was you, I would do X, Y, and Z. That's fine. Those are the decisions you make for your family. This was the decision I made for my family. So like I've said a few times now, I'm not going to ask my husband to suffer or to chronically medicate so that I can keep my cats. And when I say keeping my cats, what that means is I keep them because they bring joy to my life at the expense of him suffering. And I'm keeping them because my ego has said, cats for life, my cats won't be okay without me. Somebody else could never provide such a loving, good home to my cats, which is the ego talk, because that's not necessarily like a fact. So let me move on to how I actually went about rehoming them and where they went. So how I went about rehoming them. Initially, I was a bit lost as to how to do this. Entirely sure what to do. So I contacted some agencies that deal with like they said on their website, they deal with rehoming of pets. So I emailed like 2 of them. They were nonprofit organizations. And I said, look, can I make a donation? Will you help me vet people? Will you help me with like how I find responsible, good homes for my cats? Please let me know. And the responses I got were, no, you need to surrender your cats to us, to the so-called, like, I think, shelter type thing. But it wasn't like the Alberta shelter. It wasn't like the Calgary shelter. And then I participate nothing at all in rehoming them, where they go. I don't know what happens to them. You surrender them and then that's it. That was not what I wanted. I wanted to keep them. I wanted to know where they were going to go. I wanted to make sure that I feel comfortable with the type of home that they got. And I didn't want them to be in some kind of shelter until appropriate homes were found for them. Even when we moved into this place, the place is, I guess, technically pet friendly, but the landlord understood that we would be keeping the cats for as long as it took for me to find appropriate homes for them. And she knew that that might be, it could be days, but it could also be months. Then I found another company that you pay, I think it was like $200 something. They had different packages. They advertise your pet on certain groups or certain stuff. And the fee is, I guess, to write a good description of your pet and also to deal with the difficult to hear comments that people make around rehoming of pets, so that you wouldn't have to deal with, you know, what people have to say, their opinions and their judgments. And then they also support you emotionally through the process. Like I was like, considered this kind of, but I didn't feel that I needed somebody to shelter me from the comments and the judgment. And I also didn't feel that I needed that kind of emotional support through the process. So then what I ended up doing was I started with Mila. So why did I start with Mila? For a few reasons. The first one is I was slightly less emotionally attached to Mila versus Mufasa. Mufasa's always been like I said earlier in this video, like my shadow until Elbow was born. And Mila was much more kind of social cat. The other reason was Mila had recurring UTIs. So that was an extra layer of a sort of difficulty, one that we had to deal with, but also a fear that I had around finding a home for a cat that has recurring UTIs. And then the final reason was because aside from the UTI stuff, I feel like Mila was a much more social cat and really liked a lot more attention than Mufasa from various people, be it other pets or children or adults. So with the lessening of affection and attention they were getting, I felt that that was more difficult for Mila, who had a higher need for attention. So that's why I started with Mila. I joined several rehoming pet Facebook groups, and then eventually I made a post about Mila. Because Mila is a beautiful cat, the post like blew up. got so many comments, so many likes, but I was very transparent that she does have recurring UTIs. So I had countless conversations with people where either they would pull out or I would pull out because I didn't think that they were a suitable home for her. But as expected, it was difficult to find people who were willing to take on a cat that has recurring UTIs. I also had one or two, if not more, comments about, because I was still keeping Mufasa at that point, that I'm not being transparent and honest about the reason that I'm rehoming them or her. I'm actually rehoming her because I don't want to deal with UTIs rather than it being my husband's allergies. And I can understand why somebody would say that, but I mean, I was very transparent with it, but also Mila's had reoccurring UTIs for like the last 5 years. So if that was the case, I would have rehomed her 5 years ago, or I would have opted not to bring her to Canada. So it was definitely not because of the recurring UTIs that I decided to rehome Mila. I explained why I started with her, and there was always the intention to do both of them. I just thought that if I did them one at a time, it might be a little bit less difficult for me. So I guess I should answer that question is, did Mila and Mufasa go to a home together? No, they did not. Nor did I even look for that. I didn't even try find a home for them to go together. Having lived with both of them, I don't think that they need each other. I don't think that they were friends. I think they have different needs and what would be the best home for them. So with Mila, I think that the best home for Mila is one with more pets and possibly some children or lots of people to give her lots of attention. She likes to be like in between people, and she's much better with like loud noises, lots of stimulus, more playful, bit more high energy compared to Mufasa. Mufasa, I believe, would love to be an only child, much more peaceful home. He doesn't get along with other pets and also doesn't get along with babies and small children. Like, he's not aggressive, but he would just go away from other babies and other pets. But anyway, back to Mila. Eventually, a family contacted me that seemed like a suitable family for her. Asked loads of questions. They asked loads of questions. And then on the 24th of December, we drove her to her new home so that we could see where she would be living and meet the family a bit more, because they didn't have much of a social media presence, so there wasn't that much for me to look at. So the home that Mila went to is a mom, a 18-year-old daughter, and an 8-year-old daughter. They have a kind of low energy small dog as well as one other cat. They live in a town outside of Calgary, which is where we drove her. And when we dropped her off, the home seemed really loving. It seemed very pet orientated. The family seemed really, really nice and willing to give me updates and to kind of stay in contact, although they're pretty busy. And the contact point, or the person that I was speaking to, is a daughter who doesn't live with them, but who is there regularly. We dropped Mila off, and since then I have received photographs and I have received some updates to know that she is very much loved and adapted to the home, and she is safe. So the question, was it hard? It was harder than I thought it would be. I thought, because I'd taken so long to make the decision, and I had it's literally had been like months and months and months of it, that I thought it would be, I guess, easier to do. But when we came home, the house definitely had a big empty feel of lacking Mila's presence. And then for several days, I would constantly wonder if she was happy, if she was okay, if she was missing us, if she was scared, if she was confused, or if she was adapting well to the home. And of course, just being really aware that her presence was no longer in our house. Anyway, surprisingly, I didn't think Mufasa would really notice that much that she was gone, but I think because he was separated from us being upstairs, he became very vocal in terms of wanting a lot more attention after Mila was gone. And then again, with me being with Elba, that was really, really hard. So I was initially going to take a few weeks between rehoming Mila and rehoming Mufasa, just to give myself emotional time to go through it and the logistics of dealing with it. But then seeing how much attention he wanted after Mila was gone, I kind of sped up that timeline. But with Mufasa, I rehomed him slightly differently to how I rehomed Mila. The reason for that is because Mufasa is a Maine Coon cat, so he is very beautiful. He has health issues. He is a low maintenance cat in terms of taking care of him. Like, there are particulars that I believe would make a better home for him. Like, I had an idea of what would be the best kind of home for him, but he's like a really easy, beautiful cat, and I knew that loads of people would be interested. Where with Mila, I kind of had a natural filter, I guess, of people who weren't willing to take on a cat that had recurring UTIs. So with Mufasa, I felt that it was going to be harder to vet who would be a good home for him. So what I ended up doing was, in our community group, like the area I lived, I messaged the admins of the Facebook group and I asked them whether I could post about him on the Facebook group, because I just thought that I would feel better if I knew that he was going to go somewhere maybe closer, and if there's a possibility that he's going to a neighbor, that, you know, maybe I could visit him, or I could see him, or I could get some updates, like a lot more updates about him. It took a while for them to get back to me. The reason I messaged admin is, again, because this is like a topic a lot of people have a lot of opinions about. Anyway, they did get back to me and they said, sure, go ahead. Obviously, as long as I'm not selling him, which was most definitely not selling him. Also, Mufasa is fixed, therefore cannot be taken for breeding purposes or anything like that. So that, you know, is one less fear with really beautiful cats, is that some people might take them for breeding purposes. Mufasa was fixed when he was 6 months old, so definitely not a breeding cat. So I posted about Mufasa on the community group, and as expected, even for a small community group, I got a lot of people who were interested in giving him a home. I spoke to a few people. I even met one family, and I was very particular about what home I believe would be best for him. And I was in no rush for him to go to a home that I didn't think was ideal for him. And for Mufasa, like I said, I think that he would prefer to be an only child, one where he gets a lot of attention, a home that doesn't have small children, and a home that doesn't have other pets. So we met up with a family who came over to meet him. They did have kids, or they do have kids, and they were amazing. They were so lovely. We even agreed to be friends. But from both of our sides, we were like, no, you're not the right home for him. And what was, you know, really nice, they said out of their own, we don't think we're the right home for him, but like, if you need us to take him, we will. And the reason they weren't the right home for him is, one, they have a small toddler, but two, and Mufasa is better with toddlers than with babies because they are a little bit more gentle. In some cases, a little bit less loud, I guess, than Elba is. But the other big part of that is they work 9 to 5 outside of the home Mondays to Friday. And I wanted Mufasa to go to a home where he would have company for a large portion of the day. So when I was a consultant, yes, he didn't have me at home for many hours of the day. But after that, I worked from home a lot and I was home a lot. And I thought that that would be best for him as somebody who is home a lot. Anyway, the next day I had somebody else come and meet him, and I was a bit like skeptical, or I guess doubtful, about this person. It was a male, single male, but sounded really lovely. Now, the reason I was doubtful is because, so I'd seen Mufasa have a preference for women. What made me even agree to have this person come and meet Mufasa was, after Elba was born, Mufasa was less particular about women and seemed to very much attach to Ian in a way that he had never done before. So I had seen him attached to a male, where previously that wasn't really something I saw with him. So anyway, this person, I'm going to refer to him as L, because I think it's best to respect other people's privacy or anonymity, what? Okay, you get the picture. And L came over with a friend, and wow, like, I was not expecting it at all. He was so good with Mufasa. Mufasa seemed to like instantly take to him. He was on his back, he was purring, he seemed so comfortable, and Elle was just so gentle with him, and they just literally seemed to, I don't know, to just click like instantly. So we had like long chats, and he was saying he's interested in Mufasa, but they'd give me time to make the decision. But I mean, just having that interaction, I could see that this seems like a really good fit for Mufasa. So I was actually scheduled to meet with another person later that day that I ended up messaging and canceling, and said to Elle, like after he left, that, you know, I do think that he might be the best home for Mufasa if he'd want to come get him the next day. Right, so Elle is single, male, lives by himself, does a lot of yoga, works from home, is home a lot, and just like so gentle, and seems so aware of a way of interacting with Mufasa, and just like so much care that it really felt good. But then the day he came to fetch him, I'm very grateful for this. So Elle did make it nice and understood that this is like an emotional process. So we didn't rush it like at all. It was like slowly getting together all his things. And when I put Mufasa in the car, just like tears, like a lot of crying from my side. That was really hard. But since Mufasa is gone, I have received so many photos, so many updates, and that helped. It helped so much. I got to see that instantly Mufasa seemed to adapt to his new home and his new environment, and like what his favorite places are to sleep, and he just seemed so calm and relaxed. There was even a moment where I almost felt a bit sad and guilty that I hadn't done this sooner, that Mufasa wasn't getting all this love and affection like sooner. But of course, everything in its own time. And then there was this like really precious message from Elle that said something about Mufasa being the king of the home again. And that's really what I wanted for him. Like, he was the king of our home, and for a long time. And I felt like this last year that he hasn't gotten that. So I was just really, really grateful for him. For him to have that again. And also receiving the updates and the messages was really helpful for me. It brought me a lot of peace in something that was incredibly difficult to do. All right, so some concluding remarks. I was actually going to comment on the fact that I might not look very sad in this video, but I guess I look kind of sad now. But what I wanted to say was, I took my time to be sad before I made this video. It's been about 2 weeks since Mufasa has left. It's been a while since Mila has left, and I made this decision over months and months, and I didn't like talk about it or invite in other things. I wanted to take the time to have my feelings about it before I opened myself up to how other people feel about my decision or what I've done, or have judgments or opinions about that. So it is hard, and it has been hard, but just because something's hard, I don't think is a reason to avoid doing it if I believe that it is the best decision for the cats and also for my family. So as a final question I'm going to answer that I've most frequently gotten is Ian's skin better? And unfortunately the answer is no. So badly I wanted this to be the magic cure. So badly I wish that if I just did this big thing, that it would have such a huge impact. But I also knew that realistically that wasn't going to happen. So I knew that. I didn't have the expectation that I was going to rehome them and suddenly, you know, he wasn't going to suffer anymore, because it is a combination of things. But obviously when you do something this big, you want to feel that it makes a big difference. And I think it has made a big difference in ways, but the skin journey is still an ongoing journey for us. And I hope that this in time also makes like a bigger difference, but of course it does take time for fur to clear out of the home. And I guess with that, I'm going to end off this video. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're very sad about this, I get it. Me too. It's been hard. But they're safe. And they're happy. And they're loved.